Hey, Poppulse Secrets Fam. We've got a pulse-pounding, heart-fluttering story for you today that proves love is the only shield that truly matters. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? The heavy oak doors of the Vance Manor swung open with a groan that echoed through the marble foyer. Isabella Vance stood at the top of the grand staircase, her fingers gripping the polished mahogany banister until her knuckles turned white. Below, the chatter of servants and the clinking of porcelain created a symphony of routine, but for Isabella, it sounded like the bars of a golden cage clanging shut. She smoothed the silk of her emerald evening gown, a dress that cost more than most people's cars, yet she felt utterly worthless. Another gala. Another night of fake smiles, flashing cameras, and people who only cared about her last name. "Isabella, come down, please," her father, Richard Vance, called out. His voice was stern, lacking the warmth of a parent and carrying the weight of a CEO. Isabella descended slowly, her heels clicking rhythmically against the stone. "What is it now, Dad? Did the press schedule another photo op?" "This isn't about the press," Richard said, stepping aside to reveal a man standing in the shadows of the archway. "This is about your safety. After the threats we received last week, I'm not taking chances." The man stepped forward, and the air in the room seemed to shift, becoming heavier, charged with a sudden intensity. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against the fabric of a simple, black suit. His jaw was sharp, covered in a faint shadow of stubble, and a small, jagged scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge. But it was his eyes that froze Isabella in place, steel gray, cold, and assessing. He looked at her not like a person, but like a package he had been assigned to transport. "Isabella, this is Liam Thorne," her father said. "He's your new shadow. Where you go, he goes. No arguments." Isabella bristled, her rebellious streak igniting. "I don't need a babysitter, Dad. I'm 24, not 4. "I'm not a babysitter, Miss Vance," Liam spoke for the first time. His voice was a low rumble, deep and gravelly, like tires on a dirt road. It sent an involuntary shiver down Isabella's spine. "I'm the person who ensures you live to see 25. Isabella crossed her arms, trying to match his intimidating stare but feeling woefully outmatched. "And what makes you think I'll listen to you? The last 3 guys quit within a week." Liam didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just clasped his hands behind his back, his stance military perfect. "I'm not the last 3 guys." The tension between them was instant and palpable, a spark ready to ignite a powder keg. Isabella turned on her heel, storming toward the door. "Fine. Just stay out of my way, Thorne." "That will be difficult, ma'am," he replied, his footsteps silent but close behind her. "Considering I'm not letting you out of my sight." The first week was a battle of wills. Isabella tried everything to shake him. She drove her sports car too fast, she disappeared into crowded department stores, she even tried to sneak out the service entrance of a club. Every single time, she would turn around to find Liam standing there, unbothered, checking his watch with a bored expression. He was infuriatingly perfect. He barely spoke, never complained, and followed her orders to fetch coffee or carry bags with a stoic compliance that made her feel guilty. But he never let her cross the line of safety. One rainy Tuesday evening, the suffocation became too much. Isabella had just had a screaming match with her father about her desire to open an art gallery instead of joining the family board. She needed air. She needed to breathe. She grabbed her coat and ran out into the storm, ignoring the security protocols. She didn't take a car, she just walked, the freezing rain soaking her hair and clothes, mixing with the hot tears streaming down her face. She ended up in a small, run-down park miles from the manor, sitting on a wet bench, shivering violently. She heard the crunch of boots on gravel. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Go away, Liam, she choked out, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm not in the mood for this safety protocol lecture. A moment later, the rain stopped hitting her. She looked up. Liam was standing over her, holding a large black umbrella. He wasn't wearing his jacket, instead, he draped it over her trembling shoulders. The warmth of the fabric, smelling of sandalwood and rain, enveloped her. No lecture, he said softly, sitting down on the bench beside her, leaving a respectful distance. Just a ride home when you're ready. Isabella looked at him, surprised. The cold, robotic bodyguard was gone. In his place was a man looking at her with concern in those steel-gray eyes. Why do you do this? She asked, her voice small. You could work anywhere. Why babysit a spoiled brat like me? Liam looked out at the rain-slicked playground. He was silent for a long time. I don't see a spoiled brat, Isabella. I see someone fighting to be heard in a room full of people who only like the sound of their own voices. Isabella's breath hitched. It was the most personal thing anyone had said to her in years. And what about you, Liam? Who listens to you? He offered a faint, sad smile, the first one she'd ever seen. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines. I learned a long time ago that silence is safer. When you speak, you reveal your position. When you stay quiet, you survive. That sounds lonely, she whispered. It is, he admitted, turning to look at her. The intensity of his gaze pinned her to the spot. But sometimes, you find something worth breaking the silence for. For a second, the world narrowed down to the two of them under that umbrella. The rain drummed a steady rhythm, drowning out the city noise. Isabella felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing her toward him. She saw the man beneath the suit, the scars, the strength, the hidden sorrow. She leaned in slightly, and she saw his eyes dilate. He leaned in too, drawn by the same gravity. But then, a phone rang in his pocket, shattering the moment. Liam snapped back to reality, his mask of professionalism sliding back into place like a steel shutter. We should go, he said, standing up abruptly. Your father will be worried. Isabella nodded, feeling a pang of loss. Right. The job. As the weeks turned into months, the dynamic shifted. They were no longer guard and principal, they were partners in a silent dance. Isabella stopped trying to run away, and Liam started loosening the leash. He attended her art shows, standing in the corner not just to scan for threats, but to actually look at her paintings. One evening, at a charity masquerade ball, the atmosphere was thick with champagne and secrets. The ballroom was a sea of velvet and diamonds. Isabella wore a mask adorned with white feathers, looking like a swan, while Liam stood by a pillar, sharp in a tuxedo that fit him far too well for a simple employee. Isabella approached him, 2 glasses of sparkling cider in hand. You look like you belong here, Liam, she teased gently. Maybe you're a secret prince in hiding? Liam took the glass, his fingers brushing hers. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her arm. No prince, he murmured. Just a man in a borrowed suit. It doesn't look borrowed, she noted, studying the fine cut of the fabric. It looks bespoke. Before he could answer, the lights in the ballroom flickered and died. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Stay close, Liam whispered, his voice dropping an octave, instantly shifting into combat mode. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not painful. Something's wrong. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. 5 men in tactical gear and balaclavas stormed in, firing shots into the ceiling. Screams erupted. Chaos ensued. Guests scrambled, overturning tables and shattering glass. Everybody down, one of the gunmen roared. We want Isabella Vance. Hand her over, and no one else gets hurt. Isabella's blood turned to ice. They were here for her. Move, Liam commanded. He didn't panic. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her into the shadows behind a large ice sculpture. Liam, they have guns, Isabella whimpered, trembling. So do I, Liam said calmly. He reached under his jacket and pulled out a firearm she didn't even know he was carrying. But it wasn't just the gun, it was his demeanor. He wasn't just a bodyguard anymore. He moved with the precision of a predator, calculating, efficient, lethal. Listen to me, he said, gripping her shoulders, his eyes locking onto hers. I am going to get you out of here. Do exactly what I say. Do you trust me? Isabella looked at the man who had been her shadow, her irritant, and her friend. With my life. Good. Liam moved like a blur. He stepped out from cover, engaging the nearest gunman. It wasn't a clumsy brawl, it was a masterclass in close-quarters combat. He disarmed the man in 2 moves, using the attacker's body as a shield against the others. Run to the service exit. Go! Liam shouted at her. Isabella ran, her gown tearing as she scrambled over broken glass. She looked back just in time to see Liam taking on 3 men at once. He was outnumbered, but he fought with a ferocity that was terrifying to behold. He wasn't just defending, he was dominating. But then, a loud crack echoed above the screams. A gunman on the balcony had taken a shot. Liam jerked violently, clutching his side. Blood bloomed dark against his white shirt. Liam! Isabella screamed, stopping in her tracks. Don't stop, he roared, gritting his teeth through the pain. He fired back, taking out the shooter on the balcony with a single, impossible shot. The police sirens began to wail outside. The remaining attackers, realizing their window was closing, fled toward the back exits. Isabella didn't run to safety. She ran to Liam. He had collapsed against a pillar, sliding down to the floor, his hand pressing hard against the wound in his abdomen. His face was pale, beads of sweat mixing with the blood on his hands. You were supposed to run, he wheezed, his eyes fluttering shut. I'm not leaving you, Isabella sobbed, dropping to her knees. She pressed her hands over his, trying to staunch the flow of blood. You promised you'd make sure I saw 25. You don't get to break that promise. Liam looked up at her, his vision blurring. He reached up with a bloody hand to touch her cheek, smearing a streak of crimson on her pale skin. Isabella, there's something. I need to tell you. Save your breath, please, she cried, looking around frantically for paramedics. I didn't take this job for the money, he whispered, his voice fading. I own the company. I needed to know if I could still feel something. And you made me feel everything. Isabella froze. He owned the company? He wasn't just a hired gun? Liam? Liam, stay with me. His hand slid from her cheek. His eyes closed. The paramedics swarmed around them, pulling Isabella away as she screamed his name. 3 days later, the private wing of St. Jude's Hospital was quiet. Isabella sat in the uncomfortable chair next to the bed, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of Liam's chest. He had survived surgery, but it had been touch and go. The door opened, and her father walked in, looking humbled and tired. He held a file in his hands. You knew, didn't you? Isabella asked without looking up. I knew he was the best, Richard sighed. But I didn't know the extent of it until I looked into the background check deeper today. Liam Thorne isn't just a bodyguard, Isabella. He's the CEO of Aegis Global Security. He's ex-Special Forces, a decorated commander. The man is worth more than I am. Isabella looked at Liam's sleeping face. Why? Why would a millionaire take a bullet for me? Why would he wear a cheap suit and fetch my coffee? Maybe, a hoarse voice came from the bed, because the coffee was terrible, and I wanted to make sure you got the good stuff." Isabella gasped, her head snapping toward him. Liam's eyes were open. They were tired, but the steel was back, warmer this time. "Liam!" She surged forward, grabbing his hand. "You're awake." "I heard you yelling at me," he rasped, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Hard to sleep through that." Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. I'll go get the doctor. And perhaps give you two a moment." He stepped out, closing the door softly. Isabella looked at him, tears welling up again. "You lied to me. The whole time. You let me treat you like a servant." "I didn't lie," Liam said, struggling to sit up slightly. Isabella quickly adjusted his pillows. "I just didn't tell you the whole truth. After the military, after building Aegis, my life became nothing but boardrooms and spreadsheets. I felt dead inside. When your father's request came across my desk, something about you, caught my attention. So I was a science experiment," she asked, hurt flashing in her eyes. "To see if you could still fight?" "No," he said firmly, squeezing her hand. "I came because I wanted to protect you. I stayed because I fell in love with you." The air left the room. Isabella stared at him, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. You love me? I loved you when you screamed at me in the foyer. I loved you when you cried in the rain. And I loved you when you refused to run and leave me to die," Liam said, his voice gaining strength. "I have enough money to buy 10 lives, Isabella. But none of it matters if I can't share one with you." Isabella let out a watery laugh, leaning her forehead against his. "You're fired, Liam Thorne." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Yes. You're terrible at following orders," she whispered, her lips inches from his. "And besides, I can't date my employee. It's bad for PR." "Good thing I'm unemployed then," he murmured. He closed the gap between them. The kiss was gentle at first, careful of his injuries, but it quickly deepened, pouring out months of suppressed longing, fear, and passion. It tasted of hospital antiseptic and saline, but to Isabella, it tasted like freedom. When they pulled apart, breathless, Liam rested his hand on the back of her neck. "So," he asked, "what does a retired bodyguard do with an art gallery owner?" Isabella smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "He protects her heart. And maybe carries her canvases." "Deal," Liam said. "But I'm still driving." Isabella laughed, and for the first time in her life, the golden cage was gone. She wasn't just Isabella Vance, the heiress. She was Isabella, the woman who loved a man named Liam, and together, they were invincible. If this story found you outside Soul Stories, welcome home. Remember, sometimes the strongest people are the ones silently standing behind you, waiting for you to notice that they are your true shield. True love isn't about control, it's about protection and partnership. Comment below, what story do you want to hear next? Should we do a story about a secret billionaire falling for a humble baker? Let us know in the comments.